Well, good morning, and thank you for joining us today for this joint House and Senate Motorcycle Caucus event. I'm Scott Schloegel, and I'm the Senior Vice President for Government Relations at the Motorcycle Safety Foundation and the Motorcycle Industry Council. The Motorcycle Safety Foundation is the leader in motorcycle safety, education, and training that's used by more than 40 state rider education programs, as well as by the United States military. And the Motorcycle Industry Council is comprised of most of the motorcycle manufacturers, as well as many dealers, aftermarket parts, and allied services. We're pleased to partner with the Motorcycle Caucus co-chairs to bring this event together today. And MIC has a Washington, D.C. fly-in that is scheduled for September 21st. So please put that on your calendar, September 21st, where we hope to see you all in person. One housekeeping issue that we have today, at the end of today's presentations, we'll have a chance to ask many questions that you may have for Michael Sayre and Michael Fox. So this slide shows you how to submit your questions. You may do so at any time during the presentation, and I'll run them by our panelists at the end. So please submit them during the presentation at any time. No one else will see your questions. Those will be confidential. I'm the only one who will see it, and then I'll be able to ask them at the end. So for welcoming remarks and to kick off today's event, we have Congressman Tim Walberg of Michigan. Congressman Walberg is an avid rider and co-chair of the House Motorcycle Caucus. Welcome, Congressman Walberg. You there?
Technology wasn't working, but I'm glad we finally got into it. I can deal with technology breakdowns on my computer or on a Zoom situation or webcam, whatever, but not on my motorcycle. That's been a joy of my life for the better part of 50 years now. When I finally was able to say to my mother, I'm 21 years of age and I can get a motorcycle. It was one of those experiences where I dreamed about having a motorcycle for many years. I'd sent away for catalogs. I'd ridden on buddies' bikes without mom knowing about it. Knowing my dad had an Indian, a 1936 Indian Scout, enjoyed it very much, but gave that up for my mother. I knew that that there was a passion built into me that I would fulfill at some time. So I've had that experience for the past, as I said, almost 50 years now. Enjoyed multiple motorcycles at the present time. Have three bikes out in my barn. One being my very first motorcycle that I bought, a 1964 Honda Dream 150. It was a beautiful bike for me at the time. A lot of it didn't work well. I had to do a lot of wrenching on it, but it came into being, and like I say, I have that bike to this day. Bought it in 1971. Have a 1983 Honda Silverwing Interstate that I bought brand new in 1983, so I could ride a bike that had some type of fairing and scoot boot and travel bags on it, so I could drive to Lansing to the state capitol when I was in the State House of Representatives. And I've kept that to this day and still enjoy riding it. And also have a 2002 Harley Road King, which I love, and has taken my wife and myself all over this country in various trips, and we look forward to more of that in the future. Have a passion about riding, have ridden all over this country in the Rockies and the Blue Ridge Parkways and on the coast, both east and west, and have also rented motorcycles to do some of these trips, including taking a trip 2 years ago for an anniversary in the Alps, doing the Alps Switchback Challenge in Italy, Austria, Switzerland, and Germany on the back of a BMW R1200. Great experience. I'm glad I did it and would love to do something like that in the future. But here in the United States, the passion, of course, is for motorcycling to be done in a safe way, to be done by the book. We encourage everything at gap, all the protective material or clothing at the same time, and enjoy, I think, cycling more because of that. Taking courses, I've taken, of course, the basic rider's course and then the advanced course. Try to do that on occasion to see what's up to date, read a lot, in motorcycling and stay in contact with motorcyclists to learn the best practices, and also to keep up on the date and how I can promote motorcycling as well, both legislatively as practically speaking in using the cycle for what it's intended for. So it's a great avocation. For some, it's a great vocation. And certainly it's something that in this day and age, with pandemics, to get outside in the fresh air and enjoy a motorcycle ride here in Michigan, through the Irish Hills where I live, or any other place, is something special. So having said that, I'm glad that there's an interest. I know the colleagues, Mike Burgess, who I co-chair the caucus with in the House, and then my good friend and Michigan colleague, Gary Peters, and then Johnny Ernst from Iowa, both share the same passions. And we can do that in a bipartisan way and make it good for many people in many years to come. So thanks for attending today. And I guess with that, I'll just sign off at this point.
Great. Well, thanks so much, Congressman, for your remarks this morning. We really appreciate you taking the time to be with us. You've been a true champion of the motorcycle industry, as well as for motorcyclists and motorcycle safety, which we truly appreciate. So, and thank you for your co-chairmanship of the caucus, which is something that is critical for folks to raise awareness amongst legislators of motorcycle issues and safety issues. So thank you. Right. And now we'll hear a message from our other co-chair, Congressman Dr. Burgess.
Hello, this is Congressman Burgess. I want to welcome you to today's virtual event. Today you'll hear from Mike Sayre of the American Motorcycle Association on the Motorcyclist Advisory Council report to the Federal Highway Administration, and from Mike Fox of the National Transportation Safety Board on their 2021 and 2022 Most Wanted list of transportation safety improvements. Back in 2009, I co-founded the Congressional Motorcycle Caucus with then Representative Gabby Giffords of Arizona to promote rider safety awareness and the equitable treatment of motorcycle rider enthusiasts. Now, 12 years later, we have a new House co-chair with Representative Walberg and a Senate Motorcycle Caucus. May is Motorcycle Safety Awareness Month. The House and the Senate Motorcycle Caucus have introduced a resolution commemorating this month. We also recently wrote an op-ed discussing the goals of Motorcycle Safety Awareness Month, including promoting safe driving habits and encouraging all motorists to share the road responsibly. Throughout this pandemic, many have taken to the open road for the thrill of the ride or to commute in a socially distanced way. On the road, we're still all one community. Please enjoy the briefings from Mike Sayre and Mike Fox. Thank you for being a part of a strong motorcycle community.
Thank you so much, Dr. Burgess, for those remarks. And now, last but certainly not least, we have Senator Gary Peters, another avid rider, co-chair of the Senate Motorcycle Caucus over on the Senate side. Senator, take it away.
Hello, everyone. This is U.S. Senator Gary Peters. As co-chair of the Senate Motorcycle Caucus, I want to welcome everyone to today's event. I've been riding from a very young age, and I continue to ride as much as I possibly can today. I have traveled all across our state on my Harley, and I believe there's no better way to experience Michigan's beauty. But as this month marks Motorcycle Safety Awareness Month, it's more important than ever that everyone on the road know the rules around motorcycle safety. Increasing awareness of safety rules and guidance for all those who share the road will help keep drivers and riders safe. This is especially important as we approach the summer months and more people will be on our roads. And I'll continue working to improve motorcycle safety. I hope everyone finds today's event informative. Thank you.
Well, great. Thank you, Senator Peters, for those remarks. Truly appreciate it. You know, I enjoyed participating in the ride around Michigan that you did last summer, as well as the ride that I did with Senator Joni Ernst across Iowa that she did in the fall. Senator Ernst couldn't be with us today, but her staff is definitely online and were helpful in the planning of this event. So we appreciate everything that she does for the Motorcycle Caucus as well. So now we have our first presentation, and we're pleased to welcome Michael Sayre, who is with us today to talk about the Motorcyclist Advisory Council's report to the Federal Highway Administration. Mike is the Director of Government Relations for the American Motorcyclist Association, known as AMA, and he chaired the MAC. So Mike, the floor is yours.
Great, thank you, Scott, and thank you to the co-chairs of the House and Senate Motorcycle Caucuses and their staff for helping put on this event today. The AMA was founded in 1924 and is the largest motorcycle organization in the country, and our mission is to promote the motorcycle lifestyle and protect the future of motorcycling. And with that, I will talk about the Motorcyclist Advisory Council. Can I go to the next slide, please? The most recent iteration of the Motorcyclist Advisory Council was reestablished under the 2015 FAST Act. We had our first meeting in December of 2017. We were charged with advising the U.S. Department of Transportation on infrastructure issues of concern to motorcyclists. In particular, barrier design, intelligent transportation technologies and their implementation, as well as road design, construction, and maintenance practices. Can I go to the next slide, please? Of particular importance is barrier design. And through our several meetings over the course of a few years that produced a 10-page set of recommendations, we spent a lot of time discussing different barrier designs and potential treatment options. We had discovered and discussed in great detail that many barriers are never designed to take motorcyclists into account. They're designed with typically the largest vehicle on the road in mind. And as a result, a motorcyclist impacting a barrier may risk more severe injury hitting the barrier than if they hit the object the barrier was guarding against, a tree or whatever telephone pole behind the barrier. We discussed several treatment options, one of which is in the image on the screen there, a secondary rail system, essentially a barrier beneath the barrier, so a motorcyclist sliding on the ground does not go under the barrier and impact the posts, which are typically the worst offender when it comes to severe injuries of motorcyclists. Later on, I'll discuss in greater detail. Federal Highway produced an excellent report in response to this particular set of recommendations that go a great deal further into addressing the concerns the MAC brought up there. Can I go to the next slide? Another key issue is road design. On the screen there is the 2018 edition of the Green Book, which is one of the many critical design documents when it comes to designing roadways in this country. And we had identified a critical gap in that motorcyclists are very rarely part of these design books and guidance documents. And as such, we recommended to the US DOT to start research in developing a motorcycle design vehicle to be used in these documents. Essentially, a design vehicle typically is a engineering device to help plan roads. You have a commercial vehicle, something to help figure out how intersections are safe for the largest vehicles. We recommended a motorcycle design vehicle so the folks creating these documents can develop safe design practices for motorcyclists. Another issue we discovered is when it comes to testing the friction of road surfaces, motorcycle tires are not part of those testing practices. Motorcycle tires are unique and very different from traditional car tires. For one, they're not flat, they are rounded. As the motorcycle leans, it still has contact with the road as the motorcycle leans over. We also recommended a series of specific training modules be developed to raise awareness of these specific motorcyclist issues in road design. Next slide, please. Another issue that I hear a lot about in my role at the AMA is construction and maintenance practices. Everybody doesn't enjoy driving through construction zones, but there are tons of examples of these maintenance and construction practices that might be uncomfortable or annoying as in a typical passenger vehicle, but pose a risk of severe injury or death to motorcyclists. Often, a solution can just be better signage, so a motorcyclist does not come upon a dangerous situation completely unknown to them. Other situations require simple things like better sweeping of excess materials when it comes to chip seal treatments on the road, And in the image there of the steel plates on the road that are often very slippery and even more so when wet, a simple friction treatment applied to those steel plates makes it far safer for motorcyclists and bicyclists for that matter as well. So we recommend these issues be addressed, and often it's just a matter of practice documents and enforcement of those documents on the roads. Another issue we discovered was the size and shape of traffic barrels. Even that is an issue in construction zones, as a motorcycle is typically small enough that all it takes is a traffic barrel to temporarily obscure the sight of the motorcycle to other workers and other road users in the process. So design considerations for visibility of motorcyclists in construction zones are very important. Next slide. Another area that was really important and will continue to be even more important in the future is the architecture and implementation of intelligent transportation systems technologies. We at the MAC recognize the incredible potential for this technology to promote motorcyclist safety, but also recognize that that potential requires that motorcycles are recognized and considered as our own unique category of vehicle. Requirements that simply require this technology to detect motor vehicles without specific consideration for motorcyclists can result in a great deal of safety issues. We have one from recent history. Everybody, I think, is probably familiar with traffic actuated stoplights. You pull up and that tells the stoplight to turn for you to make your turn or proceed to the intersection. Motorcyclists sometimes aren't detected by those systems, and it's a bad enough issue that half the states in the country have some kind of law to allow motorcyclists and often bicyclists to treat those lights as a four-way stop if they're not detected properly. And essentially our recommendation here is to have requirements in writing in their guidelines and procedures to ensure motorcyclists are included in the development of these technologies, so we benefit from the safety advances there and we don't recreate this problem with the stoplight in the future. Next slide. We had a couple areas that fell outside of the main issues we were charged with providing recommendations on that are still critically important to motorcyclist safety. One key area is the inaccurate calculation of vehicle miles traveled data for motorcyclists. This has led to an inaccurate calculation of the risk exposure when it comes to understanding motorcyclist safety. I'm sure we see a lot of documents and publications about, so many fatalities or accidents per 100,000 miles traveled. But if that per 100,000 miles traveled is not accurate, that data becomes less useful than it could be if it were more accurate. Federal Highway Administration, as well as NHTSA, has long recognized this issue, and we fully support their ongoing efforts in that area. We also identified that states will often lack a specific official responsible for motorcyclist safety. Many states have a person responsible for the state's motorcycle training program, but not necessarily road safety when it comes to motorcyclists, in particular infrastructure. So we strongly support designating such officials in each state. Next slide. These recommendations were submitted to the U.S. Department of Transportation in February of last year. And just this month, Federal Highway Administration, with support from the Texas A&M Transportation Institute, published a report addressing one set of our recommendations when it comes to barrier design. The cover is on the screen now, which it's 64 pages. It's really excellent. It goes into kind of the engineering and technical detail required to further the research in this area. Texas A&M itself has done some excellent work there. That image on the cover is part of their research, creating safer barriers for motorcyclists. That particular image we identified, there are two ways motorcyclists impact barriers. You're either sliding after a crash or we are riding into one and there's an upright crash. And in situations where it's a traditional concrete barrier like that, the rider can often go over the barrier, whether that barrier is on the top of a bridge over an expressway or into oncoming traffic. It's really important to stop the rider from going over the barrier. It also identifies gaps in existing research. Critically, the lack of testing standards and protocols to verify the safety of these barriers for motorcyclists. And they also summarize key testing parameters for developing said barriers. Texas A&M has done a lot of great work there, and if you go through the report, there are some summaries of that are really informative and useful. The MAC is still hoping to have further publications from Federal Highways and USDOT addressing the other areas of recommendations. We really look forward to seeing the results of those. I'm sure the members of both caucuses are aware bipartisan legislation has been introduced in the House and I believe shortly will be introduced in the Senate to reauthorize the Motorcyclist Advisory Council with some great adaptions based on what we've learned from this iteration of the council for multiple rounds of recommendations, as well as to expand the membership categories to reflect more of the motorcycling community, as well as the state officials on the receiving end of these recommendations in the long run. With that, thank you, Scott, and thank you, members of the motorcycle caucuses. And I'll throw it back to you. I'm happy to take any questions at the end.
Great. Well, thank you, Mike. Appreciate that. That was an excellent summary, and I'm sure it's going to be really valuable for Hill staff as they're crafting the new highway reauthorization bill in the coming weeks. So next we have Mike Fox, who is a senior accident investigator with the NTSB to discuss the most wanted list that they have and their recent New Hampshire crash investigation that they did last year, I believe it was. Mike, thanks for joining us. Welcome.
Good morning. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here on this great panel. And not only am I a crash investigator for the NTSB, but I'm also a longtime rider of over 35 years of riding motorcycles. Today, in this presentation, I'll provide a brief overview of the NTSB's most wanted list and highlights from a recent crash investigation that took place in Randolph, New Hampshire. Every 2 years, the NTSB releases our most wanted list. The NTSB's most wanted list highlights transportation safety improvements needed now to prevent accidents, reduce injuries, and save lives. We use the list to focus our advocacy efforts during the current most wanted list cycle. We advocate for these safety items in many ways, such as testifying at state legislative hearings, hosting roundtables and town hall style meetings to educate stakeholders and the public of these safety items, as well as regular interactions with safety recommendation recipients and social media outreach. There are 4 most wanted list items that are specific to highway that include implement a comprehensive strategy to eliminate speeding related crashes, prevent vulnerable road users through a safe system approach, prevent alcohol and other drug impaired driving, require collision avoidance and connected vehicle technologies on all vehicles, and eliminate distracted driving. I wanted to take a moment to highlight 2 of these most wanted list items, as they're a very important component to motorcycle safety and have bearing in the Randolph crash investigation that I'll be discussing shortly. Our roadways were designed to move motor vehicles safely and efficiently. They often do not fully meet the needs of pedestrians, bicyclists, and motorcyclists, or vulnerable road users, or VRUs. As a result, we are seeing increasing dangers to this population and too many accidents involving vehicles and VRUs. Unlike motor vehicles, VRUs lack an external structure to protect them when crashes occur, and they're more likely to suffer a serious injury or even death. When we use a safe system approach to better protect VRUs and ensure safe roads for all, a safe system addresses all aspects of traffic safety: road users, vehicles, speeds, roads, and post-crash care. We must make better investments from vehicle design, collision avoidance systems, to strong safety laws and robust education to mitigate injury risks for all road users. Driving under the influence of alcohol and drugs remains the leading cause of highway crashes. In 2019, 25% of the traffic fatalities resulted from crashes involving alcohol and impaired drivers. And many of these impaired driving crashes involve drivers who both drank and used other drugs, legal, illicit, and over the counter. Complicating matters, each year more states are passing laws allowing the use of recreational marijuana and marijuana for medical use. Impaired driving is 100% preventable. Too many alcohol-impaired crashes have occurred involving drivers who have previously been convicted of drunk driving. All states need to implement laws requiring all drivers convicted of alcohol-impaired driving to use an interlock device, preventing future impaired driving. Now I will discuss the Randolph, New Hampshire crash investigation. This crash occurred on Friday evening, June the 21st, 2019 at about 6:26 p.m. in Randolph, New Hampshire. The approximate location of Randolph is shown by the red marker. The striking vehicle involved in this crash was operated by Westfield Transport, a for-hire motor carrier domiciled in West Springfield, Massachusetts. The carrier transported automobiles in the Northeast. Here is a picture of an exemplar combination unit owned by Westfield. The trailer was unladen at the time of the crash. Here is an aerial view of the crash site. A group of 15 motorcycles departed the Mount Jefferson View Inn, were traveling east on US Highway 2, shown here by the yellow line. Meanwhile, the pickup truck was traveling west on US Highway 2, shown here by the blue arrow, while approaching the motorcycle formation. The crash happened less than a half a mile from the inn when the pickup truck crossed into the eastbound lane as indicated by the red marker. The lower figure shows the staggered riding positions of the 13 motorcycles that were involved in the crash. The yellow arrow indicates their eastbound direction of travel. The diagram shows roadway evidence and the final rest position of the pickup truck. The red circle in the diagram shows the location of the first impact between the pickup truck and the first motorcycle. The position of the vehicles relative to each other are shown in the red box at the top. As the westbound pickup truck approached the first motorcycle, the left wheels of the pickup truck were on the center line. The eastbound motorcycle was traveling near the center line. Here is a photo of two of the motorcycles at final rest. This is a photo of the pickup truck and two of the motorcycles at final rest. The motorcycles are circled in yellow. As the vehicles approached, the pickup truck entered the oncoming eastbound lane of traffic, collided with multiple motorcycles before coming to rest on an embankment on the eastbound shoulder. Immediately after the impact, a post-crash fire ensued. As a result of the crash, 7 motorcyclists were killed and 1 sustained serious injury. The 23-year-old pickup truck driver had a known history of drug abuse. Analysis of the pickup truck driver's blood sample showed multiple drugs to include fentanyl, heroin, and cocaine. The levels of those substances indicate the driver had used drugs within 12 hours of the crash. Staff believes the pickup truck driver's crossing the center line occurred because of his impairment from multiple drugs. However, the combination makes it impossible to determine the specific effects of any single drug on the driver's performance at the time of the crash. Multiple issues were identified with the Massachusetts oversight of the truck driver. Investigators learned the driver was stopped in East Windsor, Connecticut for suspicion of driving under the influence on May the 11th, 2019, just 45 days before the crash. He failed a standardized field sobriety test, was arrested, and refused a urine drug test. The refusal triggered a suspension in Connecticut, which was electronically sent to Massachusetts on May the 29th with an effective date of June the 10th. The Massachusetts Registry of Motor Vehicles, or the RMV, however, failed to suspend the truck driver's CDL as required by law. An audit into the RMV found tens of thousands of unprocessed notifications and determined over 5,000 drivers should have been suspended by the RMV. The post-crash investigation into the Westfield transport discovered the carrier to be in severe noncompliance with the regulations. The post-crash compliance review conducted by the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration, or FMCSA, discovered 25 total violations, which resulted in an unsatisfactory safety rating. Additionally, the owners lied to investigators and tampered with their logging devices. The NTSB determined that the FMCSA oversight of the carrier post-crash was inadequate. The carrier should have been issued an imminent hazard order, but the FMCSA failed to do so. Post-crash, the 5 riders who died were tested for alcohol. 1 injured rider was tested for alcohol during treatment. 4 of the 6 riders tested positive for alcohol. The lead rider in the formation who was killed had a BAC above New Hampshire's per se limit of 0.08 grams per deciliter. Although the roadway evidence in this crash indicates that the combination vehicle crossed the center line at a shallow angle, the evidence provides no indication of how long the vehicle was straddling the center line before crossing, several seconds or less than a second. If the crash developed rapidly, the combination vehicle straddling the center line momentarily before crossing, even an attentive, unimpaired rider would have little time to react to the encroachment of the combination vehicle. Therefore, although the lead rider was impaired by alcohol, the extent to which his impairment impeded his ability to execute an evasive maneuver could not be determined. Investigators found that although alcohol impairment increases a rider's response time to a potential hazard, the rapid progression of impacts in this crash, along with the tight spacing, made it unlikely for most riders behind the lead rider to avoid becoming more extensively involved. This slide illustrates the injuries sustained to the motorcyclist while in formation. As shown in red, 5 motorcycle riders and 2 passengers died in this crash. Based on autopsy reports, the 5 deceased motorcycle riders and 2 passengers sustained blunt force trauma to multiple body regions. The rider leading the formation sustained severe blunt force trauma to his head and died as a result of that injury. 1 rider sustained serious injuries. He was riding directly behind the lead rider. Of the remaining motorcyclists, 4 riders and 2 passengers sustained minor injuries, and 3 riders and 1 passenger were uninjured. The 23-year-old pickup truck driver was also uninjured. We interviewed the majority of the surviving motorcyclists and examined all evidence to ascertain their use of helmets. Of the 18 motorcyclists, 12 were wearing a USDOT compliant helmet. 1 was wearing a non-DOT compliant helmet. The lead rider was most likely not wearing any helmet, and the helmet use of the 4 remaining motorcyclists is unknown. It should be noted that New Hampshire does not require motorcycle riders or passengers to wear helmets. 4 of the 13 motorcyclists involved in this crash were equipped with anti-lock braking system, or ABS. In a post-crash interview with NTSB investigators, 2 riders with ABS on their motorcycles stated they felt the technology assisted them in coming to a controlled stop, possibly avoiding becoming more extensively involved in the crash. Staff has concluded that ABS likely aided those riders in performing emergency braking during the crash sequence. As a result of this investigation, we issued recommendations to the FMCSA regarding the oversight of motor carriers. We also issued a recommendation to all states, the District of Columbia, and Puerto Rico to review their process of out-of-state notifications. We also made a recommendation to the MSF and SMSA to inform their members about this crash. We also reiterated a recommendation to NHTSA concerning requiring ABS to be equipped on all on-road use motorcycles. This concludes my presentation. If you're interested, you can visit our website for more information about this crash. Thank you.
Great. Well, thank you, Mike. I appreciate that that very thorough presentation. We'll invite Michael Sayre to join in and turn on his camera now. And we'll go to the questions. And just as a reminder for folks, to the extent that you have any additional questions, feel free to put them right there in the question box, send them to us, and we'll try to get to them before we conclude today. So we'll start with the question that came in from Mr. Fox. NTSB makes recommendations in their reports, like the one involving the New Hampshire crash. What happens with those recommendations? Are they tracked or followed up on at all, or just they're recommended and that's it?
No,
So
that's a great question.
Yeah.
That's a great question, Scott. All recommendations are tracked and monitored. We have a whole department in our agency that monitors safety recommendations to the recipient. So they can go to federal government, they could go to state government, they could also go to a manufacturer. So they are tracked and we follow them from the beginning to the end.
Great. All right. And is there a penalty or anything like that if folks don't you know, kind of comply with the recommendations that you had done? Or is it just kind of, you know, whether it's a state or a private organization, it's just kind of on them to do what it is that NTSB has recommended, correct?
Correct.
Great. Michael Sayre, we have one for you. Were the MAC meetings open to the public for them to attend if they wanted to, or just closed to your committee members?
Thanks, Scott. Yes, they were all open to the public. They were half in person, half online, even pre-pandemic. For the online ones, folks just had to register, just like kind of this event here. And there were periods for public comment and public participation as well.
And another one that came in for you was, would the new MAC authorization be the same as the last? Well, first of all, would it need to be reauthorized, or does it automatically happen in the next highway bill? And then the second part of the question was, would that authorization be the same and include the same interests on the advisory council, or a different group of folks?
It would need to be reauthorized. For one, I think I forget what month last year, but we members of the MAC did receive official confirmation from Federal Highways that our term in this iteration had fulfilled its legislative intent and purpose, so it had been essentially closed down. So in the bipartisan legislation that's been introduced in the House and was also soon be in the Senate, and similar legislation last session as well, would reauthorize it, expanding the membership, including some other motorcycling organizations, as well as other, I think in particular, an important seat we identified that voice we didn't have in the last iteration was representation from the American Association of State Highway Transportation Officials, AASHTO, the folks charged with creating a lot of the design documents and just foundational work for folks building, designing, and maintaining our nation's roads come from the folks at AASHTO. So having them have a seat at the table is particularly important.
Yeah, I will say, having attended a couple of your meetings, for the person who asked that question, it's kind of a who's who in the motorcycle transportation community that was part of the MAC. I mean, you guys had some really high-powered, smart folks on there from Virginia Tech Transportation Institute, and Dr. Lee was like from Central Florida, University of Central Florida. But I mean, just folks who are really extremely well-known and well-respected within the industry. So a very impressive group that you had on the council there. So going back to Mr. Fox, does the NTSB coordinate with NHTSA on their report recommendations?
Yes, we typically meet with any recommendation recipient in advance because we try to make it so that it's doable.
Mhm.
It would be ridiculous if we make a recommendation that's not even feasible for an agency or a manufacturer to complete. So we do meet with them in advance and tell them about the crash circumstances, and we also try to ask them, feel them out, so to speak, on
Mhm.
what types of approaches would be acceptable for their operation or agency to accomplish this. Unfortunately, sometimes because of rulemaking or because of budgetary things, these recommendations stay dormant for quite a while, and there's little or no reaction to them. And then at that point, we have to close them. I wanted to
Mhm.
follow up with your previous question, and that is that we at the NTSB we have our SRC Safety Recommendations Group 50 office that's dedicated to maintaining correspondence with all of our rec recipients. And all of that correspondence is publicly available on our website.
Yeah, great. And I know that you had made recommendations to the Motorcycle Safety Foundation. They had already kind of closed out their recommendations, so I'm familiar with that process. But for the folks who are asking questions, it's an excellent question, I think. So,
Yes, sir.
another question that came in for Mr. Fox is, on your most wanted list, does NTSB do advocacy with organizations and states to push those recommendations or those items out? Or do they take a position on legislation that's pending on issues like helmet laws or lane splitting or other issues?
Typically, we do a lot of advocacy, such as today's event. We want to promote our most wanted list. It's our premier advocacy tool that we have to try to promote our safety messaging. And we do make ourselves available for testimony if need be on particular laws that the state might be trying to get promoted.
Great, thanks. Got just a couple more questions here, and we've got a couple minutes left, so I'll try to get through them. For Mr. Sayre, Mike, I just Googled the MAC and see your meetings, but is there a website where we can download the MAC report or FHWA's response? Is there an executive summary that I could share with my member of Congress?
There should be a Federal Highways page dedicated to the MAC, and last I checked, I don't know if our recommendations are up there. They are posted somewhere on Federal Highways website, so I can certainly provide a link as well as the original document itself. And that page should also eventually have the report there as well. But I also have that copy of that file I can provide as well.
Right. Yeah. Well, I guess we could probably circulate that to the co-chair staff of the co-chairs, and that could be available for folks. Excellent. I think there was one more. Oh, for Mr. Fox, how does NTSB decide on which motorcycle crashes they'll get involved in or not? Does it depend on the federal highway or a state or local road, or is it more based on the severity of the crash?
Yeah, typically we respond to the severity of a crash. In this scenario, this crash investigation, there were 7 fatal. So that is what we would classify as a catastrophic crash, and that's why we launch on that particular event.
Right. And one final question that is also for Mike Fox. The motorcycle safety factors such as certified rider training and licensing, personal protective equipment, road safety improvements, and vehicle safety are key components to the Road to Zero initiative and have played a major role in reducing motorcycle fatalities. What other safety factors should be considered for further reduction of motorcycle fatalities?
Well, let's revisit my slide that I had on impairment. Unfortunately, 25% of traffic fatalities, both in passenger cars as well as in motorcycles, is because of alcohol impairment. And I think that this is a great topic because we're entering a holiday weekend, and myself included, I'm going to be out on my motorcycle. I know a lot of the audience will be out on their motorcycle, but we have to be preaching to everyone and anyone that can hear us. Don't drink and drive. Don't. Enjoy yourself after your ride. enjoy your ride, go up to a mountain, go to the beach, do a scenic trip, but don't drink and drive. And that's the thing that we would want to scream at the top of our lungs from every mountaintop. And I'm sure everyone on this call would agree. We have to try to put a dent in that. And that's the way we can try to reach zero. 25% is too big of a number. So let's try to do our best. If you're riding with friends, say don't drink and drive. That would be my lesson.
Great. Well, excellent advice for us to kind of wrap this Motorcycle Caucus event up with. Very timely in terms of it being Motorcycle Safety Awareness Month, as well as the holiday coming up, as you mentioned. Thank you both for your presentations today. Really, important, excellent information for us to have. Important for the folks on the Hill to have as they move into the reauthorization of the highway bill and look at funding for things like barriers and other infrastructure that could benefit motorcyclists as we move into the next phase of our surface transportation infrastructure, right? So thank you very much. Thank you to our motorcycle co-chairs in the House and Senate for your work on pulling this event together. And we look forward to having another event with you at some point in the future. Thanks much.
Thank you, Scott.
Thank you.